With just over 100 days from the first votes being cast in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary, 18 candidates are competing for their party's nomination. One of them, California Senator Kamala Harris. She joins us now from Iowa City, Iowa. Senator Harris, welcome to the NewsHour. And I am going to start with a question.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Judy.
Good to be with you. I'm going to start with a question I've posed to every other Democratic hopeful we've interviewed, and that is, why you? What do you say to voters who want to know why you are the most qualified to be the next president?
Well, I think that there is no question that justice is on the ballot in 2020. And justice is on the ballot when we talk about health care justice, reproductive freedoms justice, economic justice, criminal justice, the justice in terms of equal pay for women. All of these things are on the ballot, including the fact that we have probably the most corrupt and unpatriotic person that has ever occupied the White House. And I have a career and a background and a history of working on each of these issues and fighting in the name of the people. And when I stand in a courtroom, when I stand before the United States Senate, when I stand before the people of Iowa City, where I am right now, it has always been for the people, and understanding that a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us, and also fighting for the people with the spirit and the understanding that it's all the people, regardless of race or gender or the party with which they're registered to vote or the language their grandmother speaks.
So much to ask you, Senator, but let's start with something you mentioned, and that's health care. Yeah. You were an original supporter of Senator Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All. During the course of the campaign so far, there have been some exchanges with you about whether you thought that that should or shouldn't include private insurance. But in the end, in the summer, you came out with a plan you're calling Medicare for All, but it would keep private health insurance. I just want to say that Senator Sanders' campaign is saying this is not really Medicare for all. They say you have folded to the interests of the health insurance industry.
Well, they're wrong. I have always supported Medicare for All. I was very happy to sign on to Bernie's bill, and I give Bernie, frankly, a lot of credit for moving the conversation to where it is now. But I thought we could do better. And in particular, I traveled the country, and there are lots of folks out there who want Medicare for All. They want to know everyone is covered, that we bring costs down, that pre-existing conditions will not be a ban to access to health care. But people also don't want us to take away their choice. And similar to Medicare right now, the current form of Medicare, people have the choice to get private plans in addition to the public plans that are available. So what I am proposing is Medicare for all. And in my plan, as distinguished from Bernie and Warren's plan, yes, people do have a choice of getting a private or a public plan, but it is going to cover everyone. It's going to bring down cost. And Judy, I should also mention, I'm not going to increase taxes on middle-class families.
Well, let me ask you about that, because Joe Biden's campaign has taken a look at your proposal over the last couple of months, and what they are saying about it is that it pushes this Medicare for All 10 years into the future, and they say it is going to create a huge tax increase on the middle class.
They're wrong. They're wrong. First of all, even Kathleen Sebelius, the architect of the Affordable Care Act, has said my plan is the most effective in getting coverage for everyone. I give a 10-year window, yes, because in particular, our friends in organized labor said, hey, Kamala, we negotiated down our wages, or we didn't take an increase in wages so we could have a better health care plan, and those are usually negotiated over a 4 or 5 year basis. The Medicare for All plan offered by some others on the stage would do a 4-year transition, which would not be enough for folks in labor to be able to renegotiate. So I said, okay, well, let's do ours at 10-year. But the fact remains that in our plan, over half the population will be in the plan within the first 5 years. But we do give a longer span of time for those who need to renegotiate, such as folks in organized labor. But the reality is right now, Judy, 30 million people don't have access to affordable health care. And doing nothing is absolutely not an option.
Let me ask you about a story that is one of our headlines tonight, and that is what's going on in Syria. You know, with President Trump deciding to pull U.S. troops out of northern Syria, the Turks have come across the border. I know you've been critical of the president's decision, but my question to you is, what would you do differently? Once the leader of Turkey says, we're coming across the border, what do you do?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm the only person on the debate stage who serves in the Senate Intelligence Committee, and I'm also on the Senate Homeland Security Committee. And I will tell you that there is no question in my mind, and I think most would agree, that Donald Trump taking this unilateral action based on apparently a phone call has now delivered 4 wins, meaning Russia, Iran, Syria, and ISIS, and has put our national security at risk based on his unilateral action. What would we do going forward? Well, listen, on each day it changes because he has basically played into the hands of the Russians, who are now dictating what Turkey will do in terms of the Kurds at the border. And I frankly believe that there is, yeah.
I was just going to say, what would you have done differently? I mean, once you had that conversation with the president of Turkey, President Erdogan, and he said, we're going across the border. What do you get into a war with the Turks?
But, well, I think that we have to understand there are many interpretations of that conversation. But there is nothing that was a changed circumstance. If the United States of America and the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America says we are not going to abandon the Kurds who stood with us, fought, because let's remember, that was a counterterrorism mission. That was not a humanitarian mission. We have been in Syria because of ISIS and the threat that ISIS poses to our national security. And the Kurds stood with us, and by the tens of thousands, by some estimates, died in a battle with us fighting ISIS. So in that conversation, to your point, Judy, there should have been from the Commander-in-Chief of the United States some backbone to say, we're not going to abandon our friends. We're not going to stand back and let this border be opened up so you can massacre the people who stood with us.
Well, I don't want to be too...
So yes, I absolutely would have handled that conversation differently.
I don't want to be too speculative, but your point is that you would never have taken U.S. troops out. You would leave them, you would have left them there.
No, that's not what I'm saying. We need to end these endless wars. We need to bring our troops back, but we have to do it in a responsible way. And certainly not because because Erdogan has said, I want to get in there and claim that territory. Certainly not because Putin knows that it is in his best interest and has always been part of his long-term plan to increase his reach into the Middle East. And this is the problem with the way that Donald Trump conducts foreign policy. It is transactional, based on a phone call, instead of understanding that there are long-term, not to mention short-term consequences for every act, and not to mention every word he speaks.
I just want to cover a couple of other things while we have you, Senator, and that is the impeachment process. Do you agree with the approach by the House of Representatives to focus narrowly now on the president's dealings with Ukraine, the leader of Ukraine, or should this be a broader inquiry?
I'm not going to second guess what they're doing, but I do believe that, again, as I said, justice is very much on the ballot, and there has still not been any real consequence or accountability as it relates to the findings in the Mueller report. We all know that Bob Mueller and that report were very clear that, but for a memo in the Department of Justice saying that a sitting president can't be indicted, that Donald Trump would have probably been indicted. But I think that it is right also for the inquiry to focus on the matter at hand, which is that there was clearly, and we know that from the testimony that we're hearing about today, there was clearly quid pro quo, and that the President of the United States committed a crime, it appears, committed a crime, even by his own confession, when it comes to soliciting assistance from a foreign government in a way that would benefit his campaign and benefit him personally and politically.
And just in a matter of a few seconds, concern about whether this impeachment inquiry interferes with the 2020 contest among Democrats, that it takes attention away from what your message is.
I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm here in Iowa City. The concerns that people have when I'm doing the town halls and the meetings and living rooms that I'm doing are varied. People are concerned about whether their democracy is being undone by Donald Trump. They are worried about whether their system of justice still has any integrity. Does the rule of law matter? And they are concerned about the fact that almost half of American families can't afford a $400 unexpected expense, or that a $500 medical bill will bankrupt them. These coexist as priorities, and I think we need to be able to never underestimate the intelligence of the American people, to be concerned about the integrity of their government, and that concern is born out of a love of country. And also, they want to know their government works for them in giving them medical care, giving them, their children, an adequate, if not a superior public education, certainly than what they're getting, and a number of other issues.
Senator Kamala Harris joining us tonight from Iowa City, Iowa. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Judy. I appreciate it. Thank you.